Hello, Bill. How are you this evening on March 6th, 2025?
Good. How's it
Could you hear
going?
me, Bill? How are you? Good. So we're here,
Good.
Bill
How's
and
it
I are here to
going?
talk about, it's good. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So Bill and I are here to talk about, of all things, a Union Township trustee meeting. So it's not a Claremont County wide thing, although it's going to involve Batavia Village as well as Union Township. But Union Township's the biggest area in Claremont County, and several of the trustees in Union Township have had or demonstrated the possibility to have small or large political aspirations beyond Union Township. So we know politicians learn how to do the things they do at the local level, and then they take it up the chain. So we want to talk about some stuff that happened in a meeting that was on last Monday, February 25th, 2025, and three particular topics. And before we jump into them, I just want to make a quick editorial and I want to get your reaction to it, Bill, before we jump into three particular issues. Is, Union Township used to have 2 meetings a month for its trustees. It has for several years now, since there's been sort of regime change in the trustees, only have 1 meeting a month. And the meetings end up being like death marches. So the meeting that we're going to talk about here was 5 hours long. So it makes it almost impossible for a citizen to pay attention. Even if, Bill, for example, you tell me to go listen to something, it's hard to even find it because it's a 5 hour long meeting. And it just seems to be in the spirit of out of control and an inability to admit that it was long ago a mistake to move to 1 meeting a month versus 2 meetings, when you're putting the meetings start at 6 p.m. and a lot of times don't end until 11 o'clock at night. Any reaction to that? We haven't talked about that here, but what's your reaction to that, Bill? Just the
Well,
length of these meetings.
I think they'll go on the side of that. There was a zoning case, and the zoning case adds a lot of time. But 5 hours for a trustee meeting that's grueling. I tell somebody that the Union Township meeting is 5 hours long, and they just shake their head like, "How's that possible?" Even with a zoning case, that's just above and
Well,
beyond.
and it's become routine. It's become routine that there are these long meetings, 4 or 5 hours. Um, the So this meeting in particular, I had not listened to it. You had listened to it. You had messaged me or talked to me about listening to it, and then I listened to it driving back and forth to Columbus. So and I had to sit in the garage here for a little bit to listen, catch the end of it when I got home. Um, in there, so it took a long time, and I was paying it, I think, on like 1.5 speed to get it all in. So, Bill, this meeting, before we jump into individual topics, it's been, over a week since the meeting, but you wanted to have a conversation about it. Before we hit the individual topics, maybe just give your quick insight up front on why this meeting kind of stood out to you, or what are some of the key things that stood out to you in the meeting.
Well, what really struck me with this meeting, and was Chief Reese had a response to John Becker about, what if you pull an illegal over at a traffic stop, or you encounter an illegal, and the answer to Chief Reese is, most of the time we have to let them go. So if somebody's here illegally in the state of Ohio, unless they're committing a criminal act, you have to let them go, unless you can get an ICE agent to come serve them a civil warrant to
Well,
detain them.
why don't we cover this topic first, since you're hitting on it first, and it's the
Sure.
shortest of the topics we want to cover. I have a quick 1 minute excerpt from the meeting talking about this issue with illegals in Union Township, and let me go ahead and play
Well,
it. Let's hope it works.
if our officers make contact with somebody that we suspect is in the country illegally, and they commit a criminal offense, so two things there. I've talked to Sheriff Stratton. He's assured me that the jail will take them for a criminal offense. Now, if we're out with someone we suspect is here illegally, and they're not creating a criminal offense, and we run their social security number or we run their information, if ICE has issued what's called a civil arrest warrant for them, meaning they'll come pick them up strictly for being here illegal, At that point, our officers would have to make contact with an ICE officer, and they would have to come out to the scene and serve that warrant. Our officers are not allowed to do that or unable to do that. So I've been told that it's particularly hard to get them to come out in a timely manner. Obviously, we can't sit out on these stops all night and wait for them. So short of a criminal offense, they probably won't be going to jail or probably won't be able to do anything with them.
Okay, so there you go. There was the key point of the discussion around illegals. So why don't you take it from there and let's cover this topic.
So that struck me kind of odd that illegals are allowed to be in the state of Ohio. And upon research, it is true. There was a bill called, it was House Bill 671, was introduced at the end of October last year. And that House bill was basically Rep. Adam Byrd was on it, and Jennifer Gross. Those are our two local reps that were signed on. Gene Schmidt's name was not on that bill. I don't know why. But the long text of the bill essentially stated that if you are in Ohio illegally, it would be a felony. What would happen then if that bill passed, if an officer stopped you, you were illegal, they could make an arrest and they could take you down to the county jail and then await whether it be trial or an ICE agent to come take you and detain you and deport you. But it would give Ohio peace officers the ability to make an arrest if they stop an illegal alien, because currently they cannot do that unless they're committing a criminal act.
So that bill did not advance or go anywhere, or what happened to that bill?
It timed out. So the way House bills work, anything that doesn't get done after the end of the year they get wiped out. So this one was sitting in committee. And you know, if you introduce a bill at the end of October, there's no way it's going to go into law, because it's got to get through testimony, then it's got to get to the Senate, then it's got to be signed by the governor. Not happening.
Well,
so,
unless just so you know, and it's coming up here again, they jam all kind of crap into the budget bill that's got nothing to do with the budget. They do it routinely. And so this is the kind of thing that in theory could get jammed into a budget bill. By the way, I'm against all the crap getting jammed into the budget bill, but it's amazing whatever kind of legislation they want to get through without any hearings, without any discussion, a shitload of stuff gets jammed into the budget bill. But go ahead.
Well, I spoke with Rep. Byrd, and he's working on reintroducing that bill. And then our Sheriff Stratton is on the Sheriff's Association for Ohio. He's going to also work on trying to get support from the Sheriff's Association to support that bill. I also texted with Senator Bernie Moreno, and he is supporting this, and will send a letter in as well. So our goal is to get this bill reintroduced and get it passed into law, so that in the Ohio, which I really couldn't believe, I thought Tony misspoke, because I couldn't believe that it wasn't illegal in the state of Ohio to be an illegal alien, but it is not. So, and that
well, I think it's illegal. It's not I think it's not a jurisdictional thing of local law enforcement being able to do it. It has to be federal law enforcement.
It's not a criminal offense to be an illegal in the state of Ohio.
It's not an Ohio criminal offense.
Even at a federal level, those warrants are civil. They're not criminal.
I don't believe that's true, by the way. So I just think you need federal agents to do it, not, because it's a federal law. One thing I did notice, listen to that clip though, is that and I just noticed it right now, playing it back. I'd cut it out, but he said he understood that it took forever to get one of these agents out. Something, if you have a relationship with him, I'd ask him, is like, okay, you said you understood that. Have you done it? Have we actually had that experience that we called ICE and it took too long to get somebody to come out, and therefore we couldn't do anything? And so, because he didn't say he knew it, he said, I understand it takes long. Here's another crazy thing I'll throw at Union Township or any local law enforcement. I bet you if they were aware of where there's concentrations of illegals, especially criminal illegals, maybe they could work a deal with the feds to come out and do it all at one time. We know where, 10 illegals that are criminal, not maybe in Ohio, let's do a raid together. They do that, on other things where they have a joint activity. But maybe it would be worth more to figure out. Maybe Tony Reese and team could figure out if there's 10, 20, and it was problematic, and individuals that they could engage federal ICE to get them all at one time, or if they become aware of an employer or something like that that's going on. Wouldn't you love to see a joint Union Township federal ICE raid someplace that was hiring illegals or doing other illegal activity?
Yeah, if you could get them to coordinate it, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So that was the first thing. Where you want to go here? So that was one of the things that you wanted to hit on from this meeting.
Either one of the other.
I want to do the zoning case last. So just because it'll, I think, be our longest conversation, maybe. But what else do you want to hit on? The other thing we want to hit on, other than the zoning case, was going to be the Batavia Village pot shop tax.
Yeah, I'll let you go ahead and kick that one off.
Okay, so I've got a clip for that. It's only 15 seconds. But the bottom line is that we're in a new partnership in Union Township with Batavia Village for purposes of marijuana, taxes on marijuana shops, to have the employees there have to pay a income tax. It's called a JED, a Joint Economic Development District. And just so people might not be familiar with a JED, but a JED is where a municipality, like a city or a village, that has an income tax partners with an adjacent township or a township within which they are located. Some of them is located, or it might be one. Maybe it's one away. There's like a thing. There's a map. I think I misspoke. But they partner with a municipality to designate an area within a township as being a joint district for economic development, which means that the township can apply the income tax from the municipality to people who work in that JED district. So, for example, in Union Township, people that work at TQL, they pay a 1% income tax. People that work at West Claremont pay a 1% income tax. And there's a variety of places where people pay the 1% income tax. We're not here to talk about the policy of JEDs and when they're right, when they're wrong, although we want to get into that a little bit, we could. The key thing here is that for the first time, Union Township is partnering with somebody other than Milford City on doing one of these JEDs. And they are partnering with Batavia Village to do a JED.
The evil and mysterious KEN GEIS.
Well, it's Batavia Village being having as its manager the evil, beusable from hell, KEN GEIS. So and it's particularly funny because one of our trustees in particular probably wakes up in cold sweats at night thinking of KEN GEIS because he just hates him with such a passion. And that's Michael Logue, hates KEN GEIS with a passion. So it's very eye-opening to see the Union Township trustees partnering with KEN GEIS and Batavia Village. And here's the 15-second clip that'll get at why.
This does impose the same 1% earnings tax that we have with the city of Milford. A couple of things. It does include a no annexation clause in it, which is important to the township, for the township to be able to protect its borders.
So what you heard there at the end was a annexation protection that is part of this deal. Batavia Village cannot annex Union Township. We're going to come back to that. They cannot annex into Union Township. So let's go from there, Bill. So what do you got to say? What do you got to say on this to start with?
I still have not figured out what part of Union Township borders Village of Batavia.
The answer is
have
none.
you figured that out? Because I haven't.
The answer is none. So
now,
just so people that might be listening, Batavia Village has no contiguous connection to Union Township anywhere right now. So before they could ever annex anything in Union Township, they would first need to annex enough of Batavia Township to where they touched Union Township, and then they could start annexing things in Union Township. But so go ahead. What do you? I checked that out. By the way.
I thought that to use a JED that you do have to border.
And I think they changed the law that there's a limit. I misspoke at first. There's a limit, like it can only be like one or two away or something like that.
Okay, I did not know that. I thought it had to be
So,
actual.
yeah, I forgot about that when I started. It used to be that it had to be directly contiguous. So Milford City is directly contiguous with parts of Union Township, but now it does not need to be directly contiguous.
It'd be interesting to see which legislator updated that code, presented that legislation.
I don't know. I don't have any. I I have no problem with that. I hit the thing. I think the whole tax policy of the state of Ohio is idiotic from how much is relied on for property taxes. But maybe that's another call. Like how taxes are raised is completely arbitrary and unfair in a lot of cases. But in this case, the JED tax. So you get the thing of like, okay, by virtue of working at a pot shop in Union Township, you have to pay a 1% income tax, for example. Is that fair or not fair? But that's money going to go into the township. And the interesting thing is they openly admit, I asked in a meeting, I don't think you were there, Bill, but I asked in a political meeting, I asked John Becker, why are you doing this with Batavia Village instead of Milford like you always do? And he just openly said, because we're trying to make sure KEN GEIS can't annex parts of Union Township. like that's their upfront explanation as to why they're doing it with Batavia Village. So it strikes me, they have an inordinate fear of KEN GEIS. I mean, if you're KEN GEIS, you should feel pretty good that people respect you so much that they're afraid that you're 2 townships away on the risk game, and they think you're going to come at them and annex part of their jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's that sounds like that was the motivation to get ink to contract. So the question I have, did you know KEN GEIS pretty well when you've met with him and you talk to him about things.
I do not disavow KEN GEIS.
Do you think that Union Township was really up for any annexation? Like, do you think that would have been?
No, I think that I have not asked this question. I'm careful about what questions I ask. You know, I don't think I've asked this question to anybody, but I think that KEN GEIS, I think it's, you ever heard the term sleeves out of the vest? It's like means, you know, I'll give you the sleeves out of my vest. Well, a vest doesn't have any sleeves. So that means I'm giving you nothing. I think that KEN GEIS gave them the sleeves out of his vest in this deal because the village did, because I don't think the village has any interest whatsoever. I would not even understand why they would have any interest in annexation into Union Township. It doesn't make any sense. So I just think it's a reflection of the paranoia of Union Township more than anything else.
Very interesting.
So now it does provide, which is good, Corey Wright an opportunity to be at least talking with KEN GEIS, which I think previously he would have gotten in trouble if any. If Michael Logue found out that Corey Wright had so much as said hello to KEN GEIS, he'd probably be on being questioned about it. But hopefully that dialogue, because I think KEN GEIS is exceptionally talented. He can be a tremendous resource to Union Township, at least to be able to ask about things, right? Like when you want to be able to ask him about stuff that's been done in the past, how things are structured, you know, to always have an open phone line basically to him. But that's the funny part about this all. And I want everybody that's watching, Bill, and you listen to, I think I said this to you, but here's the irony of it all. If you're from, and I want the Batavia Township trustees to listen very carefully to what I'm going to say. And if anybody listens to this that's from Batavia Township, go tell the trustees to listen to this very carefully. In a bizarre way, what has happened is I don't think Batavia Village had any interest, intent, or plan for any time frame of any reasonable nature to go into Union Township. Okay, I do think that they're open to annexing parts of Batavia Township. And the bizarre part of all this is now Union Township will be, in return for protection, will be funding the Batavia Village engine, and maybe some of that funding will be used to enable more annexation of Batavia Township. Like that. So Union Township, what do they call that when the Russians made the deal, the Ribbentrop Pact? The Russians made the deal with the Germans, you know, arch enemies, but we're going to make a deal with them to protect us at the expense of other people. And so, you know, and I do want to, before we move on to the next topic, I do want, you know, annexation is just not purely like KEN GEIS or somebody says, go annex something. a lot of times what happens is townships, say Batavia Township, is not willing to work at all with a developer in a reasonable way. So then that developer or that area or the landowner will go, if they can be annexed, they go solicit being annexed because they can't, and I've seen this kind of happened in Owensville in Stone Lake Township, where the township was so hard to work with on something that the owner of the property wanted to be annexed. And as a result, the township lost all control over what was going to happen, and Owensville Village took control. So, but it's amazing how afraid the township trustees are of KEN GEIS, and that now they're going to be helping to fund Batavia Village for whatever Batavia Village wants to do, with which part of that could be economic development and expansion into Batavia Township. So, but Bill, what else? What other thoughts on this? On the hegemony of KEN GEIS, or on the Union Township capitulation or seeking a treaty for protection?
Nothing further on this.
So I know you're pretty eager though. We get some more pot shops, right? You and I are huge on pot shops.
I was thinking more along the lines of hanging out with Becker at a few, because I know he's a big fan
a few pot shops. So okay. Let's go so the third topic we want to talk about is about a development. So there was a zoning hearing. To me, it has echoes of Miller Place, which people that don't know about Miller Place, that was a development project to take place at off of Rumpke Road in a big area of land, prime development land, by the way. And that would involve there had been a federal case over it, and there was a lot of mumbo jumbo, but basically changing to allow a certain development there. And that was rejected ultimately. It was super controversial. What was that, Bill, like 4 or 5 years ago at this point?
Yeah, probably about 4 years ago.
And it was basically a big part of the platform on which Michael Logue ran for office, is that these kind of development deals, not listening to the residents, and allowing developers to do things that were contrary to the residents. Now, I'm a freedom-loving conservative, and I believe that developers have the right, property owners, be they developers or you, Bill, or me, we have the right within the zoning for our property to do what we're allowed to do with our property, to use our property as we see fit. A lot of these cases, or like this case, involves somebody wanting a zoning change to the property. They want it to be, it's zoned to do one thing. They want it to be changed to allow them to do something else. And that's where the government has an interest, and the local community has an interest. Like, let's say that next to Bill Thomas's place, somebody decided they wanted to put a chemical factory, and they came in to do a zoning change to put a chemical factory. And Bill, you'd probably show up protesting that you did not want a chemical factory next to your house. Okay. So, and you moved into your house, let's say, in reliance upon the zoning around your house. So you didn't expect that at some point there'd be a chemical factory. So this area of land in this particular deal was, I guess, always intended to be developed at some point in time. There's some talk about a stub road connecting into it, so forth. But I'm going to put up on the screen here. But there was a developer came in, and the idea is, and you might not be able to see this, they were going to do houses. Part of it's actually in Batavia part of it's in Batavia Village. I'm sorry, Batavia Township. Part of it's in Batavia Township. Part of it's in Union Township. But the particular tract of land lots of it is not developable. So you can see on this map where the houses and condos are. A lot of it is not developable. And I believe then the intent of the big part of the developer is to put a golf course in, to put what is called a short course, which means it's par 3 course. And so this developer, their plan is to develop houses and condos on this property, as well as this golf course. And that, I guess, the topology of the property is not good in a lot of places. It might be okay for a golf course, but there's a lot of places you couldn't build houses or condos on. There's places you are, and you see them on the map. So this is something that had a tremendous amount of community interest. And, And generally speaking, there were a lot of people at this zoning hearing to speak against the project. I don't know anybody other than developers spoke for it. Like it was all people against it. And as an aside, before we jump into this one, it seems to me, Bill, and I'd like to get your reaction before we jump into this one, that when you look at the Honda East, you look at, different projects around Union Township, the ferocity with which people that ran for office committed to listen to the community, don't do zoning changes without the community's permission, has in real life turned out to be not so much. And because basically any well-heeled, well-known developer tends to get whatever they want out of the Union Township trustees now, which in one level, I'm being simplistic here, it's just like what, for example, people like you, Bill, would have been critical about the old regime, that developers can pretty much, so you've got, Honda, what's the, Evans, people just get what they want, and whether and it just seems like the community tends to lose, when they're talking. What's your reaction to the statements I just made?
So I believe that the issue that we have with the old regime, as we referred to it, is that CUC was primarily always the developer. It seemed like they were getting all.
That's not even factually true, Bill.
But that they would get. I've told you in the past, I would talk to different contractors, just about business and things, and they don't even bid things in Union Township because, for example, the firehouse over there off Beechwood Road, it went to CUC. Nobody even really bid it because they didn't. They knew they were going to win it. So that was one of the issues that was happening before. But to go in and think that as a new trustee board that there isn't going to be all this development of homes, patio homes, condos, whatever, what people don't understand in the state of Ohio, if you're a township and you have a piece, let's say you have 200 acres of farmland and you sell that to a developer, the township has no legal authority to supersede that being developed into the state minimum, as long as the plans meet state minimum zoning guidelines. For example, half-acre lots for subdivision homes. The township can't do anything about it. In fact, Miami Township on the Weber Oaks project, they did deny. This has been years ago. They denied that project, and the Ryan Homes sued them and ended up winning. And what happened is now the township, a lot of the commodities and things and extras that they were throwing in, that Ryan said, well, we're not doing any of that stuff. We're not going to do extra green space. So what happens a lot of times, and this is something Carl Schultz taught me. He's actually until he got ran out of Miami Township trustee by Mary Wolf. He's actually knows a lot about zoning. He said it actually behooves the township trustee board to work with developers and try to get things out of them up front in those developments. For example, the Willowbrook Farms development on the corner of Branch Hill, Guinea, and Cook Road. There was a Dietmeyer farm, and it was sold. Some things that you can't take into account: school capacity, traffic lights and patterns, water infrastructure. Right. None of those things can impact the amount of development. So if you've got a school at capacity, an elementary school in a zoning district that they're putting a subdivision in, you can't go and say, well, we don't have enough room for the kids. That the school district has to accommodate that. So as long as they meet those state minimum guidelines, half-acre lots, there's nothing the township can do. So what they tend to do is try to work with the developer. For example, in this case, Joe Dills was working with the developer to try to reduce the amount of homes and try to increase the amount of space. That was one of the things they were negotiating, was to try to make it to where it wasn't going to be such a crammed footprint.
I just want to interject something off of what you said, because I think it's important something you said that everybody would understand this. Whether you are for, particularly if you're against the development, okay? When you go to a zoning hearing and you stand up there and you say things like talk about the traffic or talk about the schools, what Bill said is really important to remember. Those would be illegal basis to deny zoning on. They cannot legally deny zoning on those things. So I shake my head. If you ever see me in one of these things, I'll be like putting my head down like this. when somebody's up at the microphone talking about traffic or talking about schools or talking about this. Because just so everybody understands the way it's supposed to work, if I have a bunch of property and I want to develop a neighborhood on it, that's going to generate a lot of taxes, right? Now, I'm being simplistic here. It's going to generate a lot of taxes. That's how the government is supposed to improve the roads and improve the schools to be able to support the development. Otherwise, the government, you could have land and always say, hey, I want to build 50 houses here. And the government could always say, well, you know, the road is not good enough for that. It's like, well, you're the government. You're the one who builds the road. So, oh, and I'm sorry, we can't build your road. So, and there's a name for that, but it's called, it's not unjust enrichment like you'll have in some contracts, but it's basically means the government has appropriated your land in effect because they've basically prevented you from being able to use it. And that's where, like, probably the case you're talking about, Miami Township, where trustees can get in Dutch because if they deny something, then they can come back, the person can sue. And they're going to win if it was denied based on something other than legitimate basis. Now, there is a zoning plan, and you can have zoning plans, and I don't think they're legally required to change a zoning plan. So if it was, for example, zoned for residential, and somebody wanted to put a commercial thing in there, there's no obligation on the part of the trustees to change the zoning to commercial. So there's
you have to apply. You apply for what's called a variance, and you get to change the zone, and you can have your property rezoned from commercial back to residential or residential to commercial.
But my point is they don't have to, they can say no. Okay. They just can't say no for illegal reasons. And there's things like, you know, if it's an area where you would legally be able to build houses, they can't prevent you from doing something that would be legal. I don't know the particulars enough of this one, so I don't want to say things that people might apply to this one, but, you know, they can't, like, you know, maybe, you know, if it's zoned for a certain density of houses and somebody wants a different zoning for higher density or something like that, they're not necessarily obligated to do that. But the closer it gets to that the use is the same as the zoning, the harder it would be for trustees to deny somebody doing something with their own land because it's their land. Just as a quick aside too of what you said, I don't know about half acre lots. I don't know. You might be more knowledgeable than I am on the lot size requirements and so forth.
It's half acre is the minimum state.
Well, I live in a whole neighborhood of quarter acres lots, so I'm not sure.
Somebody either when that was developed, state law only recorded a quarter, or
I'm sure state law today, I'm sure I can do quarter acre lots, Bill.
Or again, a developer can come to the trustee board and get a variance on those laws and say, can we do quarter acre lots for this home? What happens is they'll say,
I'm going to check that out because I would find it.
It's half acre. R1 is half acre. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, but that's just one category of zoning. There's R1, R2, R3. There's all kinds of categories.
I'm saying the basis though, R1 is like the lowest level of zoning is half acre lots. But what happens a lot of times, the developers will go to the trustees and say, hey, if you give us and allow us to do quarter acre lots and they can do more density of housing, we'll kick in $3 million for a light. We'll put in a track around. This happened with the Dietmeyer place. Ryan came in, or not, I'm not sure if it was Ryan that was the developer. I think it was. But they did like a walking track. They kicked in money for some infrastructure upgrades because the water lines coming down Branch Hill Guinea were a mess. All of that had to be ripped out and redone from the county. There's a light there at Cook and Branch Hill Guinea that they forked over some money.
So let's, because I want to stay focused on this particular thing and the, so what happened in this particular hearing was a lot of residents spoke against this, and it was long. Probably. What do you think, Bill? Like an hour of the whole thing? An hour of the whole 5 hours at least was just this, or maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah, about a little more.
Was this hearing? So what was the most? It got approved ultimately with a bunch of caveats, and I've put I don't even know what got approved, frankly, from listening to it, because it was like subject to things, like subject to the staff agreeing on a plan relating to setbacks and stuff like this. So it's like, what? Like, how does that happen? And does that come back before the legislative body? And so there were things going on that I thought were kind of ridiculous in the meeting. Like, so they're real time going from 20 feet to 50 feet barriers. And it's like, don't you need to have people that work on this shit? Like, look at this closely. Like, can every lot do that? Can you get what I'm saying? They're making commitments that would seem to me they'd require analysis. So it's felt to me like the whole thing should have been, I don't know the right word, but like tabled, if you get what I'm saying, so that they could confirm that all these things that were being talked about, the barriers and all that kind of stuff. But what happened was after all, and this is what I think, when you called me about this meeting, this was what you seemed to be the most concerned about. So, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, but was
No,
that
it was
after,
the Tony Reese thing was my big concern.
okay.
No, go ahead.
Well, hold on. After all of it, was that all these residents had talked, and then Michael Logue talks, and he basically is reading from pre-written remarks. That is, and this is part of what maybe the Tony Reese thing was bigger, but this is one of the specific things that you told me that was that it was kind of like, okay, so Michael, were you listening to all these owners, or did any of it matter because you already had a pre-written statement you were going to read at the end of the hearing? And I'm sure that happens with politicians all the time, that they have their pre-written, they already made their decision.
Absolutely. School boards, trustee boards, they have their 9 times out of 10, and maybe even more than that, they have the decision made up. Nothing you say in those meetings, it's already cooked.
Well, but here's what I was going to say is that they need to, if Michael Logue is ever going to beat a candidate stronger than Matt Beamer or Tammy Brinkman, he might want to get better at reading his prepared speech without it being obvious he's reading a prepared speech that he had before the meeting. So I'm going to play the clip, Bill, because I cut out his 3-minute. So this is 3 minutes. So this is the longest clip and the last clip. But this is him giving after all these owners have been there clapping, cheering for each other, speech after speech after speech, and they were all pretty good. And let's remember too that this developer in this thing doesn't even own the land yet. Doesn't even own the land. And frankly, this developer has a track record of big dreams and failed promises. That is here. But this is his kind of speech he gives at the end.
To me, this PD application, gentlemen, this board comment too. I firmly believe it's already made significant concessions.
Sorry, do we need to close?
So here's one thing I forgot to mention this. He starts giving the prepared speech, and they haven't closed the hearing, and so you can't give the prepared speech. So Joe Dills is interrupting him to say, like, hey, he stops him in his prepared speech to tell him we got to close the hearing. So I'm just going to rewind this. And so I think it's kind of a combination of prepared speech, but also not knowing what's going on, that you haven't done the steps to be where you're giving your speech.
To me, this PD application, gentlemen, this board comment too. I firmly believe it's already made significant concessions.
Sorry, do we need to close?
Close public comment
Yeah,
with
we
a
need to close it.
roll call. Motion for it, please.
Yeah, so moved.
Thanks.
Second.
Roll call.
Michael Logue is the president of the trustee board
Correct.
currently.
So it needs to be
you're aware.
reminded we need to have a motion, a second, and close.
Thanks. No, appreciate it.
At 9:23.
Thank you. All right, so I was saying, from hearing the story, hearing the history here.
Got to remember, where was I?
From all the residents tonight, this proposal, I feel the PD has made significant concessions, reducing the original 216-unit multifamily development plan that was initially pitched 3+ years ago, down to just 41 single-family homes, each valued at around more than $500,000. I believe the applicants demonstrated a willingness to work with the community, and from what I've just heard, an additional for buffering, how they've eliminated the lighting, and I'm sure that they'll be open to doing street signage if we can work that with our service department too. I'm envisioning kids at play and something on the street signage, but I'll talk to Mr. Taylor on that, or can be worked administratively with the staff. And that could be throughout Shaler. So the demonstration to work willingly with the community. And at this point, I do believe, gentlemen, it would be unreasonable to continue dragging the process further as they have diligently been working towards this for 3+ years. This development, to me, presents a unique opportunity for high-end housing that transitions well from the existing neighborhood while supporting golf and enhancing the area's appeal. There isn't another business concept like this in Southwest Ohio. And to the residents concerned about connectivity, I agree with you. Yes, and there is a stub road at the end of the neighborhood, and that intent has always been to expand when there's a stub road. And as I take it from, again, the jurisdiction where we're at, under the current R3 zoning, they could proceed right now with building 216 apartments at the end of that stub road. So instead, this plan offers a far more attractive alternative that I believe aligns with the character of the surrounding area of the community, and is a win-win when you really look at it over the last course of time.
All right. So what you going to say about that?
So R3 zoning allows for single-family residential development, potentially with some allowance for two-family residences or single-family residence on narrow lots subject to special use review. R3 districts are intended to provide space for low-density, single-family detached residents. So I'm just curious, and I haven't had a chance to really look at this, how they got around this whole, because these are not just duplexes. These aren't two-family residences. These are actually apartments, correct?
No. There's no
What's that?
apartments. It's single-family houses and condos.
Well, aren't the condos set up to be like, that was my question. Are the condos like over in Miami Township, they have apartment style condos? They're condos, but they have 6 units in each building or 8 units of apartment condos.
I'm sure these are some sort of townhouse style condos. My wife and I used to live in a townhouse style condo. I don't know most all the discussion and the presentation was on the single family houses. And that's, so I'm more interested in specifically, your thoughts on, that was the part where you brought to my attention kind of the can thing. And I can say, listening to the thing, driving in the car, I'm not a fan of Joe Dills and his I don't have a clip of him, but a big part of his thing is if we don't approve this, we're going to get sued. But Joe Dills absolutely is 1,000,000% more on the talking more sincerely off the cuff and showing more empathy and connection with the community people that just talked versus cold, kind of cold and rehearsed. And
well,
I can see Michael Lugg practicing that at home.
Joe put a lot of time in it. He goes out, he meets with residents, he talks with people in the community. He's not just sitting. He didn't come to that meeting without having conversations with people first, which is something he committed to run. And I always talked to him about it because when I supported him to be a trustee, that was one of the keys is, are you going to, get out, talk to people? And of course, that's what he does. He enjoys doing that. So he came to the table with already talking to people in the community, talking about this, and he had a lot of knowledge on it. And I'm sure they negotiated at least something. I don't know for sure. They probably talked terms in previous meetings. My thought around this is there's really not much the township can do. They can deny, again, if they come in and they start denying and they get nitpicking and saying, well, that's technically not accommodating on the R3, then the developer can take them to court and say, okay, we'll meet the bare minimum.
Do you think that they did the right thing by approving this project over the objections of the community?
Yeah, I do, because I think the community, I'm not saying that I like that they did it because Becker denied it. Becker voted no on this because Becker always votes no on these types of developments. But what people fail to understand is if you get the developer, I don't have the list of, I call them accommodations. So if you get a developer to say, I'll give $3 or $4 million in accommodating work to help this area to make it less impactful to those around, less impactful for traffic, whatever they agreed to put in, they may have got the developer to put in several $1 million worth of concessions. and they probably changed some things, gave them a little bit of
Bill, I'm not,
give and take.
I don't know how close you are, but the answer to that's no, they didn't, because the communities thing is they wanted the developer to fund a bridge so there could be an access point that didn't go through the Shaler neighborhood. And the bridge was, going to be 2 million. And then there was a discussion about TIFs or something to fund this bridge to alleviate traffic congestion. So I think this whole development, by the way, to me, I would have absolutely voted no on this because, which is kind of bizarre. We're like at opposite ends because the first off, I wouldn't be afraid of a developer on something like this. Okay. When the guy doesn't even own the land, the person making the presentation doesn't even own it. He has an option to buy it. He doesn't even have a settled. I would tell him, we're voting no, you come back. But tell you what, we really like what you're doing. We're going to vote no right now. Why don't you come back when you actually own this land?
Because,
and then we can.
Because most developers, they're not going to buy that land without a approval to do.
Happens all the time. Happens all the time.
Well, in this case, I don't know this developer. I personally, as somebody that buys properties, if I didn't have an approved plan, I wouldn't buy the property. Why would I invest millions and millions of dollars into something to come to find out I'm going to have to fight?
Where a lot of times you're going to have the owner of the land currently trying to get the changes because there's a developer that will buy it, then. But I don't know how the owner, I don't even know who the current owner of the land is. I don't know that they even said that. But where was that person, in this mix of?
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, how many times when KEN GEIS was doing developments in Union Township, he had that developments already prearranged, pre-planned, and brought it before the trustee board for final sign off. It happened all the time. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing because it grew Union Township. Like for example, Jungle Gyms, that whole development. It's not.
But that's an entirely different kind of thing. That's a TIF and a commercial, not a residential area.
And I don't know why there wasn't a TIF applied to this development. I don't know.
They talked about it. It didn't generate enough money, but just for somebody watching, Jungle Gyms to this day, that's owned by the township.
Right.
Jungle Gyms leases that, so it's not even the same kind of thing. I think actually, Bill, here's the thing that I think is on this is I would not have approved it because the guy didn't even own the property. And I believe that this golf course, I'm putting this map up here, that golf course ain't never going to exist. I think the golf course is a trick because the guy, if he gets this land, what he's going to be able to do is sell these lots to Fisher Homes, make a killing on the developable park, and then he could walk away, never do the golf course. Now, I've put in a record request to Corey for anything in the documents. I don't have the documents at this point, but anything. I do have the some of the documents, but I asked Corey for anything that would stipulate the timetable for building this golf course and any penalties for not building the golf course or any contingencies. Because what can happen is things like, let's say you or I buy a house or a condo that's supposed to be a golf course view, and then the golf course never gets built. And so part of the value that we were paying for was that, and now we've got a house that's not worth it, what it was, because so I never would have done this deal because I don't even know that this guy, I don't think this developer's ever built a golf course.
And what do you know what the vote for Board of Zoning was on that? I think they approved it, right?
This came up in the UTRCC meeting, and Rob Wing said it was approved, but there was no discussion like, unanimously. I just think that I can say that I believe that, I think you and I even talked about this, is that in this packaging thing, right, wrong, or indifference, KEN GEIS, any deal KEN GEIS would have brought in would have been vetted before it got to the trustees, such that the risk that the developer would not have the means to fulfill on the development would be relatively low. That if KEN GEIS said this is a good deal, we've said this, Lloyd Akers telling me, if KEN GEIS said, I checked it out, this is a good deal, you could feel pretty confident if you're a trustee that the developer's solid, that the whole thing is solid, okay? And I think on this one, nobody checked out this developer in his history. He's got a history of problematic developments.
Yeah, I
And
was disappointed when you brought this up in the Union Township meeting that John Becker said, we didn't vet this guy. I mean, can you even do that? I'm shocked that a sitting trustee wouldn't know that you could. I mean, why couldn't you do a background check on a developer?
right. So just so anybody watching what Bill's talking about, he was you were in the meeting too. I forgot it, Bill. And I asked about checking the developer, check. And I'm not talking, it's not a background check like, we want to get you to pee in a cup and all this kind of stuff. This is just like financially, if they're a company, if it was a company, what's their credit rating? What's their this, just that they're solid, and, there's lots of ways you can check somebody out, DMV reports, and I brought this up. Do you do any background check on these people? And Becker's like, are we even legally allowed to do that? That was like his first response. It's like, why wouldn't you be allowed to do that?
Yeah, that was kind of an odd response because, I'll be honest, the trustees, I have been hard on them about contracts in the past. They, like with Susan Ayers, they signed a contract with her, and honestly, it looked like it was something signed at a Perkins on a napkin. I mean, it was, the terms were
Do
were
Perkins
so
exist still?
yeah, out by King's Mill. It was a joke, and I've told the trustees, all three of them separately, that stop signing these Mickey Mouse contracts that allow the people of Union Township to get hosed, because the terms of these contracts are pathetic. Like there's no checks and balances, no metrics, no measurables for employees, and same thing with these developers. There should be a standardized contractor sheet that is filled out for any contractors of interest. When I did development in Norwood, we had a developer or a concrete guy that went around and repaired sidewalks, and he would do it in whatever temperature. And one of the things about concrete, if you don't pour it in the right temperature and the right setting, eventually it will start to pit and fall apart quickly. It doesn't last years and years and years because it doesn't cure properly. Well, this guy went and repaired a bunch of sidewalks in 20-degree weather, didn't put heat blankets on, didn't do all the proper things. And within a couple of years, those sidewalks were burned out. They had to be replaced. So Norwood, the city of Norwood, I talked to them, and we were able to blacklist the developer from the city. He can no longer do work in the city of Norwood. Even if he goes out and gets another LLC, his name, if it pops up on the LLC, they're blacklisted. We should be doing stuff like that. We should be researching to see, hey, is this developer blacklisted in another municipality? Have they done shoddy work elsewhere?
Are they involved in litigation over their projects?
If we're not doing that and we're signing with developers, I agree. Well, that is a huge, huge operation.
Well, you're imagine, if you will, that I was the administrator and you were one of the trustees. And if let's say that this deal goes south, okay, and the golf course never gets built and people are all pissed off and it's a train wreck, okay, you would probably come into my office and read me the riot act on, like, you cannot picture yourself as being a trustee or something on a bad deal, telling an administrator, we need to be sure that you don't bring in deals that end up being embarrassing to us or cause us, township or even political problems, because, and so by the way, Miller Place, Ken Geis, brought in a deal where everything was solid, but his blind spot on the Miller Place deal was that he ended up getting into a position where it embarrassed the trustees, right? And so there's political considerations and there's business and money considerations around deals.
It cost them, for the most part, that one mistake cost at least one trustee their position, if not the other two.
So now we've had, and we don't have any press in Claremont County until I find a way to secure the Claremont Sun. Wouldn't that be wild if I owned the Claremont Sun?
You mean you're already
it's 1,100 print subscribers. I could triple that in an hour. Okay, but now we had the Fernando Cruz amphitheater little project that disappeared into Neverland. Okay, so if I were these trustees, I would be like, Corey, Mac, what's the guy's name? Mac, whatever. don't effing bring us any other deal that is not solid. Okay. Maybe we can get Ken Geis to give you a 3-hour continuing education class on how you make sure a deal is solid before you bring it in. And I would be very concerned with the things I'm raising, even about this developer that is this golf course going to really exist? Did we have the right contingencies in there? I'd be worried, like, whoa, shit. One last thing. I know we're running a little late here. I know you wanted Bill Thomas actually was asking me to box it in like this call. But the golf course, remember this, Bill? The golf course was supposed to be lighted. That was the guy's thing.
Yeah.
So the zoning
Midnight
rejected the lighting, okay? And when I'm in Florida, I'm not in Florida right now, but there's a lot of these par 3 lit at night golf courses, right? That's what people do, okay? Especially in Florida because it gets cooler at night, so if it's the heat of the summer. But any event, so, okay, hold on a second here. Wouldn't you think that could potentially have a devastating impact on a business model for a golf course? If you're a par 3 golf course and your business model that you've done everything on is being lighted, and then it's not going to be lighted, how much money does that cost? You get what I'm saying? Because it constrains the use of it, right? Because now you can't sell certain hours of the day. And
I'll say one thing. I've had people say to me, well, why doesn't Union Township consider becoming a municipality? Because then you could write your own zoning laws and put your own restrictions. I would urge, I used to own a house that I rented down in Old Milford off of in Claritoma. And I'll drive through there because of my grandmother's still at Sim. So I go past there all the time. There was something Michael Doss had worked on. I don't know if anybody knows Michael Doss.
I think there's some children in the community that know Michael Doss.
Yeah, when he wasn't trying to lure kids into his basement or a white van with no windows, he was doing crooked developments. There was the old Milford school board office where the board office used to be. And I think it used to be even further back, maybe the high school or the junior high many years ago. But it's right there off of the what is that, Cleveland or Elm, whatever that is, right? I think it's Cleveland, where Cleveland comes in, and then you turn right on that road. I think it's Elm, or Cemetery. I'm sorry, Cemetery Road. So if you want to see how bad it gets, go over there and look at the density of housing. Not only they cram them, the drainage. There were houses at the top of that hill that got completely hosed over. Their backyards now are cliffs. I mean, even if you incorporate, it doesn't resolve the issue if you've got bad government.
Well,
bad government is the problem.
I think it's a catch-22 because I agree with what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. Okay. But my mind gets stuck on, one of the issues is that developers are not evil. Okay. And they try to make products that people want to buy. They don't want to make products that people don't want to buy. Okay. And the reality right now, and this is not a comment on Milford or what you talked about, so I don't want to. The reality right now is that people don't want half-acre lot houses. That is not what young people want. They prefer, younger people and older people what they want is lower maintenance. They don't want to be cutting grass all weekend. They don't want to be. So what you see
So Chris, I'm gonna correct you on this. And you're talking to somebody that's been in real estate for a long time. And I do a lot of development of current properties, and I'm currently looking at developing multifamily area. I'm looking at land and different things. You're actually incorrect on that, and I know that for a fact. There is quite a few younger families that do want land out there. It isn't. There's the younger. I think the more liberal generation, they want these.
I think my mom's generation wants that.
Well, yeah, but
patio homes,
the idea of the patio home,
stuff like
patio
this.
Homes, yes, but you made the statement that young people don't want maintenance. That's not true at all. I find a lot
we can have another call on this talking about it, but it's indicated by what young people. There's two things young people want. They want things they can afford, and a lot of young people can't afford an estate home on a half-acre lot. and they generally want lower maintenance because, they don't. What's so funny about it, Bill, I've read, and this would be for a different call, probably, is that in our country, historically, the suburbia that we have is actually the anomaly in the history of the United States. It's the anomaly. Like my grandmother grew up in Mount Adams. And because people lived in those kind of communities typically, and then you had farms. Okay. Then suburbia came to be. And now there's a lot of people want patio homes, stuff like this. And the only other comment I was going to make, what I was trying to go with that point is the land use, smart land use now sometimes is that the home part of the lands are more dense, but then people want like integrated parks just for their development. You get what I'm saying? Like you have a bunch of condos here, but around them is essentially a park for that whole development. And I think ultimately the government needs to be responsive to what things people want to buy, not what government wants them to buy. And they need to do so smartly. And that can be a topic for another discussion that we have, because you have experience with development. I have my views of, what
all the houses that I've remodeled or done had large lots, usually half acre or larger. And all the houses I have sold have went to younger people, not older people. People in their, like the Polo Fields house, that was a $650,000 sale. And I sold it to somebody that was in their probably late 20s, maybe very early 30s. And there's a lot of land maintenance there. That house is a lot of maintenance, just mowing the yard on the hill and everything. So I'm just telling you, all the properties I've sold, even the buildings I sold, went to younger people in their 20s. Like that building in Norwood, the guy couldn't have been more than 27,
but you realize,
28
you're talking about anecdotal things that you've been personally involved with. Okay.
Well, I also have a lot of real estate friends, and
Okay.
we talk about the market in depth.
But for every
so it's not just me.
young person that has a good job that cannot find a house or a condo in the price range, like I lived in a condo, my wife and I lived in a condo when we first got married, that cannot find a house or condo within an affordable price range for a young person, what are they doing? The reason why you have luxury apartments going up everywhere that are a pit of wasting money for young people is because they can't find housing. So part of what I'm bringing up is, young people also want things like the banks. They want things like downtown Milford. They want things, and a lot of times they're being squeezed.
Yeah, those are the kind of people,
into
Chris,
apartments.
Those are the kind of people we're trying to not allow to move into Claremont County.
Okay, what? They're the wrong kind of people. I want those. By the way, I want those kind of people. I want to engage them and make them conservatives. We can't just assume that people that young people, that we're going to keep Claremont County conservative by putting up a wall and not allowing housing that we think liberal people might buy. That's asinine. That is asinine.
I don't know. I completely disagree, Chris. If you want to attract liberals, you'll change your school to make it more liberal. You'll do more high density housing. I think that absolutely plays a role in the longevity of keeping the wrong people that you're trying. If you want to keep your county red, hey, listen, they got all of Hamilton County. They can go blue up. If you don't like that, go to California or Columbus or Cleveland. The three biggest cities in the state of Ohio are blue.
If you don't engage them, this is a different conversation. If you don't engage young people, or you can't engage young people for whatever reason, then the outcome is predetermined. It's like saying we have a church and the people around us are all dumbasses. So what we want to do is just minister to ourselves versus figure out how to go convert those people. I'm just trying to bring up, we kind of got on a sad track because all I was trying to make the statement, Bill, is that I think that when John Becker or when people talk about we only want half acre lots, I live on a quarter acre lot. Our whole neighborhood's quarter acre lot, and it's the notion of like we should force people to have the kind of housing that a politician thinks that they want to have is only going to make matters worse, because it's going to drive to more apartments then. And that is a money pit for young people. You hopefully would agree on that, that high-end
So
apartments for
R2
young people is a waste of their money.
To give you an idea, so Chris, you're probably R2 because R2 in Ohio is 1/4 acre lot is the minimum. So if you're R2 zone, that's 1/4 acre. R1 which would be the lowest. I shouldn't use the term lowest. I'm probably using the wrong term. It's the most that a township can require a builder. It's the lowest level. The most that a township can require is 1/2 acre. So R2 is 1/4 acre lots. I just looked it up. So that's probably what you're in an R2
And I would venture to
development.
say that most lots in Union Township are going to be R2-ish. All the developments, people, there's a limited market for people that can afford estate homes on 1/2 acre lots. So I know my house, I'm of the age now. I don't know about you, but I'm of the age now. I'd like, if I could get AstroTurf, I might want to get AstroTurf, if you know what I'm saying. Like, you get to a point where it's like I end up spending all my weekends doing projects out in the yard, and some people love that, and some people don't.
So the R3 doesn't have an acre requirement. It's a 5,000 square feet, often a range of up to 5,000 square feet for single family homes. So
one of the things, we've hit the
stop.
3 things out of the Union Township meeting. Let's see where we agreed and disagreed. So on the illegals, you're right. You're right, and Tony Reese is right that they can't do certain things unless they're committing a crime. However, I think we both agreed that, hey, it'd be kind of cool if Tony Reese arranged an ice raid, a joint ice raid with Union Township, to show that make it worth ICE's while to come out and visit. And I'd like to know if it was fact-based, how long it actually takes for them to get out. So that was that one. The pot shops in the JED, I don't know that we had anything to agree or disagree on there. We're just both, I think, astounded at the fear of KEN GEIS that would cause, and now Union Township's going to be funding KEN GEIS through the income tax.
That is an interesting twist.
By the way,
of events.
If you're into pot, I'm not into pot. If you're into pot, go buy your pot in Union Township. Every dollar you spend a pot in Union Township, KEN GEIS gets more money for the war chest for Batavia Village now.
For now, unless that issue goes through.
There's no issue on the table, I don't believe. So.
Yeah, it's in May 5th. You need
I thought you were talking about Batavia Village. I'm not.
And it pulls from what I understand is it actually can take back some of that money that local municipalities are getting off the tax for pot.
I don't know.
Not all of it, and reapply it to the state.
For now, between now and May, buy all your pot in Union Township. We're open for business in Union Township to buy all your marijuana needs.
Yeah, Becker's gonna love you for that.
We want to be Pot Township. Pot Township. There's more density of pot in Union Township than any other township, or even doesn't Milford have 2 pot shops?
Yeah, they got the one. Well, the one I know the one over there by the theater down there. But I think isn't that one only medicinal?
I don't know.
Purposes.
So we have to remember too, if you're into pot in Union Township, not just medicinal, recreational. You need recreational pot. Tell your friends. We've got very good freeway exit on and off, so you can get into the township quick. Space it out a little bit, because I've already been told, like on Mount Carmel to Basco on Saturdays, we got to be careful. We don't want to get the cars, cause a wreck out on the road because there's too many people from Kentucky buying pot. And I don't even know how that works. I don't know. I've never seen this. Somebody told me that the cars get backed up. Like on Saturday morning, that's the time when people are coming to get all their pot early. So don't travel in Union Township if you're just a normal person shopping. Don't travel around the pot shops on Saturday early. Do your Home Depot run a little later, because the pot people are out in force to pick up their recreational pot. So and then the third thing we talked about, Bill, is this development project. And, just the thing that you had brought up to me originally was the speech-like thing that Michael Logue did in that. And then from talking here, we've uncovered that you and I have a little bit different view on that development and what we would have done with it. And then it sounds like we could have a multi-hour debate on various other things relating to housing and so on and so forth.
It looks like the issue one that's on the ballot for this coming May, which everybody needs to be aware, we do have an issue on the ballot. It looks to me like it's really just about the gerrymandering.
And don't forget the other issue on the ballot if you're in Union Township is we've got West Claremont Schools, also a little bit of Miami Township, a little bit of Batavia Township. West Claremont Schools, brilliant strategy of both increasing property tax and adding an income tax. It's genius.
Are you you're voting for
you know,
that,
I can't
correct?
even.
You're in favor.
I just haven't gotten around to it. I will be. I don't know the feeling of it, but you've reminded me. I'm going to take down a note here because I committed to somebody to host a Zoom call for people that want to fight it, and because it is the dumbest ass thing I've ever seen. Who had you? You know, I'm so sick of property tax in Ohio. You and I probably disagree on this, but I'm more in favor of income tax than property tax because income tax is taxing income. Property tax is taxing grandma.
No, I don't disagree with you as long as it's done and not over the top. Like Milford wanted, they were.
I'm making a general statement about how
here's
you
the
get tax revenue.
Here's the kicker. If you're going to come at us with a tax revenue or tax income tax charge for school levy, you better guarantee that there will be no levies in the future. Milford only committed to, I think it was 10 years.
What you had to do is come forward with an income tax simultaneously with a property tax reduction. We're going to tax grandma less.
If you watch the news article that I was on, I actually suggested that people would have been receptive to the income.
Well, then all the seniors would vote for it, right? All the people that would be for that because it would reduce their property taxes. You know, right now that's a huge problem whether you're a senior or not. Way too much shit is dumped into property taxes, libraries, mental health, schools. You know, and property taxes are medieval when you really think about it. You know, they're medieval because it's like the king came by, Linda Fraley came by riding on a horse and decided your house looks like it's worth this. Thou shalt pay this much tax. like, you know, and so anyway, that's another discussion too. And then let's close it out. I saw a couple of comments over here, but this is I agree 100% on what you're saying about tax abatements. We're not talking about tax abatements, by the way, in this development. We didn't talk about tax abatements. And people confuse tax abatements versus economic development incentives versus TIFs versus, there's all these things that get lumped together. Put a strain on schools, police, and fire. Say no to tax abatements. Let's not even say anything about that, Bill, because you and I could have a long conversation about that. I'm sure there'd be a lot of debate. We might want to have some alcoholic beverages when we're having that discussion on when are these things good, bad, and what's.
No. We're going to go.
Oh, yes. We should do a live stream from when it gets warmer. I'm thinking about this before we sign off here. When it gets a little warmer, I'm thinking about you and I should do a live stream where we're sitting at a table doing a talk on the sidewalk in front of the pot shop on Mount Carmel, Nebraska. The sidewalk you're allowed to do that on because that is an easement. Okay. And we could just talk about whatever. We'll talk about some other related subject, just as car after car after car is going through in the background behind us getting pot. So.
We might see some elected officials going in there and picking up some dime bag.
All right. Well, thank you, Bill. Thank you, everybody. Have a good